morning and welcome to Resolutions for Recovery. This show is about all things related to substance use disorder, empowering and educating the family, working through all different levels of grief, of problems, of trauma that usually lead to substance use for the identified person, but also leaves the family in a lot of wreckage with substance use, with just dealing with their loved one. But life also just deals us trauma after trauma after trauma. And my special guest today is Gwen Uss, who is a grief specialist. And I'm fortunate enough to have gone through the program and to really understand that there's so many levels of grief. You know, most people only equate grief to death. And grief is so much more than that. And I love when you say, when you're a little kid, you put on your little baby backpack and you start packing them in, because it just gives me such a great visual. Especially children. We don't know what traumatizes them, and what you with an adult brain thinks would traumatize a child really has nothing to do with you, because you're thinking with an adult brain. And their little problems are tremendous problems to them.
Yeah, and I like to say that, you know, we start experiencing loss from the moment we come out.
Yes.
And they smack us on the butt, and we're all of a sudden, you know, we want to get back in there where it was nice and warm and quiet and safe. And, you know,
we didn't have to eat, we didn't have to...
Yeah. And
we didn't have to poop. We didn't have to do anything.
It's like it was all of a sudden like, what's going on?
Right.
You know, because grief is really about change. You know, you move a little bit, you know, a year or so in, and they tell us, you know, they take away our passy and our bottle, and they tell us, you know, we can't poop in our diaper anymore. We got to poop in a potty. And all of a sudden, it's like life as we know it is like changing.
All the time.
All the time. And, you know, and then, you know, I remember my... one time we were growing up, and I had my younger brother. He loved Matchbox cars, and his favorite Matchbox car, he was playing in the kitchen, and it went under the refrigerator, and he was devastated. And, you know, my parents, as good as they are, they say, you know, don't worry, on Saturday we'll go get you a new Matchbox car. But he didn't want the new one. He wanted the one, his favorite. And so, you know, it's like when you say, you know, we as adults, we don't recognize as kids what's so important, what they experience loss, and that they have these emotional reactions that if they're not recognized by adults as being a loss, that there are going to be feelings around it. They have no recourse but to kind of push it down and move on.
Yes.
And that's where that backpack thing comes in.
That's where but it's so true, you know, and even with parents now, you know, when we talk about it on so many different levels, when your 10-year-old comes home and their best friend doesn't want to be their best friend anymore, and you say, oh, you think that's a problem? That's not a problem. You should see what I had to deal with today.
Yes.
That's their world.
Yep. Yeah.
Their peers, their school, their family. That's their world.
You know, and I know growing up in, you know, with an Italian background, you know, everything could be cured. Every emotional thing with food.
Have somebody eat.
You know, don't feel bad. Let's just go have a cookie.
Yes.
You know, here's a lollipop. You want a lollipop? And you know, especially talking about, you know, what it is that we're doing here on this show is, and, you know, none of this is ill-intended. None of this was designed to hurt us growing up.
No, it was actually meant to make you feel better.
Exactly. And so when you come home from school and the little girls or boys are, you know, mean to you, and you come home and you're crying and they say, what's wrong? And you say, well, the little girls and boys, you know, weren't nice to me. And, you know, well, don't feel bad. You know, here, have a cookie. You'll feel better. And what happens is right then and there, it does not go unnoticed by that child that, oh, I have some sad, painful feelings. And when I ingest sugar, it's not that I feel better as much as I feel different.
Yes.
And it sets us up then to say, oh, have a bad feeling, take something.
Yes.
Fast forward 10 years down the line, and they're 15, 16, and they have their first heartbreak.
Yeah.
And, another kid comes up and says, don't feel bad. Here, smoke a joint.
Exactly.
Here, have a beer. It'll make you
Exactly.
feel better.
Yeah.
And so it starts so early, and we're so unconscious of it. So it's just about, bringing the level of awareness and the consciousness up that, when that is happening at such an early on, to, be able to allow kids to process through the emotions that they're feeling, open up the conversation so that they can start grieving stuff in real time, thereby not needing to numb their feelings with something outside.
Exactly. I think people are really uncomfortable with the word grieve.
Yeah.
But we can call it coping. We can call it communication. When you empower a child to communicate their sad feelings and say, wow, that you did have a difficult day.
Yeah.
Validate them.
Yeah, and then they're free. Like once they get it up and out, I think that's one of the.
I think that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I know that part of what I'm learning, because I've gone for some more training in grief recovery, and really focusing in on, that when we're born into this world, we have these three systems. We have our intellect, which is super important, in order to be fully functioning, to have that really good brain sitting in there for problem solving and communication and memory and all that kind of good stuff. But then we also have, this kind of, I do this because it's kind of the way I envision it, this kind of spirit or, soul,
Yes.
whatever it is. And it's not really about what you call it. Some people call it the collective unconsciousness. If you like the movies, some people say it's the force,
Right.
But there's something also that's within
Energy.
us. And it's also where intuition lives.
Yes.
And then, of course, the other system, we have the intellect, and that soul, spirit kind of thing is our emotional self, which is stored in the body, which shouldn't be stored, is processed in the body. And that when we're born into this world, provided that there's no other underlying issues going on, that all of these systems are designed to work in harmony with one another. And yet we start from a very early age getting these messages that we start to become cut off from that spiritual part,
Yes.
and we start to get cut off from that emotional part. And so we're only left to rely on the intellect, which is not designed for everything.
No.
But yet that, as a society, and what we practice, we get good at. So we start trying to process grief, which is emotional. We
Yes.
try to figure it out.
There is no figuring it out.
No, or we try to pray it away, when really, grief is in the heart, it's emotional, and emotions are processed in the body, and or if they're not processed, they're stored in the body.
When I first started practicing yoga,
Yes.
and so much grief and emotions are stored in your hips. So is it amazing that we have most people have back pain.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have back pain if you got to work through all of those emotions. And really, I've done different cleanses and different things. And, your liver also stores a lot of emotions.
Oh, yeah. Anger.
And when
Right?
when you start to process all of that, it does get released from your body. And certainly, the science of yoga, really, and it is a science that goes back 5,000 years, is designed to push and move all that kind of stale emotion and energy out of your system.
Yes.
So, so many times, I know when I practice, you could just start crying in the middle of yoga, and it's fine.
Because it's a release.
It's a release.
Yes.
It's a release.
And I love that whole, kind of, utilizing tools which is why I think I love grief recovery so much, and why I find it so impactful with people, especially in conjunction with other modalities.
Yes.
Because we're like I said, from when we were this little, we're storing things because we all we came in with all of these parts in harmony. You know, if you think about a baby, and, you know, if a baby has a feeling, you know, they're hungry or they're tired or they're upset about something, you know, they develop the feeling and
Yep.
it comes up and out.
Yes.
You know, they don't have to worry about it. They don't think about it. They don't have to go to therapy for it. They just up
They
and
just
out.
cry.
Right.
And someone helps them soothe themselves through it.
Exactly. We certainly hope that's the
We
case.
certainly hope that that's the
But
case,
yeah,
yeah.
they can process it. But then, you know, there it is, you know, at that 2 or 3 years old, you know, and think about it like this, with the intuition, you know, a little kid, you know, starts drawing a picture. And what do we say? You know, well, why'd you draw that?
Right.
So we're forcing like an intellectual answer. They're like, I don't know. I just felt like drawing it. It was
Right.
just came to me.
Well, the only time I would ask that is if they had drawn it on the wall.
Yes, that's right.
So then you'd say, why did we draw that on the wall?
And they would say, I don't know. I just
don't know.
something about it.
Exactly.
You know?
It's like looking at my puppy like the same way.
Exactly. Yeah, and then you know, the emotion. I think pretty sure I'm getting this number right. By the age of 15, most people have gotten, or most teenagers have gotten, over 20,000 like instances where they have been told that what they're feeling is not okay. So they've been gotten 20,000 messages that say, unless you're feeling happy or grateful, that it's not a good idea. Like, you shouldn't feel this way, try feeling this. Or don't feel this way, have a cookie. I mean, think about that. 20,000 messages to say that bad or not bad, because I don't feel like feelings are bad or good.
They're not.
They just are. They just are, and it's almost like, you know, it's like a buffet, right? Yeah. So, you know, when I go to a buffet, I don't see any good in tofu or hummus. I just don't. I don't like them. They don't taste good to me, but it doesn't mean that they're not good for me.
Correct.
And I think feelings are the same way. There are some feelings that I prefer because they feel better, but it doesn't mean that the rest of the feelings, sad, disappointment, frustration, that are not good for me, in the sense that there are certain instances where the normal and natural response to that would be sad. And if I'm telling myself that I shouldn't feel sad, or if I'm getting messages from people around me that I shouldn't feel sad, when sad is the normal reaction to something that has just happened, then what do? I'm forced to then just push it down, and then it's not good anymore. So realizing that, and I remember somebody saying this, and they said, you know what, Gwen, feelings are like keys on the piano. You have to be willing to feel them all if you want to hear the music.
Oh, I love that.
The music being a full life, because life is not just about happy, joyous, and free. Life is about
What's
all
ironic
kinds of
is
things.
I have a very joyous spirit.
Yes.
Most of the time I'm very happy. And when I'm quiet, people, what's the matter? What's the matter? Nothing's the matter.
Yeah.
Nothing is the matter.
Yes.
This is just me at this moment in time.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yes. Well, it's interesting.
And fortunately, I can say there's nothing wrong with it, and I'm not going to. I used to do that, like just be happy because that's what people expected from me. It's okay to be quiet.
Well, I think it's, and we're going to be doing this in the 2-day workshop. We're going to be, you know, talking about this, is that it's not society. It's not even just they want you to feel happy all the time. So if you think of, like, you know, we have like kind of this line, and in life we have feelings above the line and feelings below the line, such as life, right? Different things happen throughout our days, throughout our weeks, in our lives. But it seems that we get this message that, because there are some people, you might have come across them, that they're not particularly happy when you're happy, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Because then they start thinking and comparing. If you think about Facebook and people are posting all these
my
things,
goodness.
it's a setup for a lot of people. They start to feel not so great about their lives, whatever it is. So it's true when you say society likes to keep us kind of numb. You know what I mean? Like, not
Society
to feel.
wants everybody to feel happy.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling happy, then you need to do something to yourself to make yourself feel happy.
Yeah.
Because all the other feelings are not good.
Right, or just kind of in the middle. Just kind
Right.
of just, not too much of anything. And I understand, and when I say society, I know it's not
But
everybody,
if you never get attached to any one feeling, you never worry about everything else.
yeah.
You're the happiest moment in your life. You may or may never experience that level of happiness again, and that's okay. Don't equate every other happy moment to that one moment, because you're missing out on an awful lot of other moments.
Well, talking about too that that whole present moment, grievers. One of the things that I see most, whether I'm working with people in groups or individually, is, and it's not just grievers, but I'll stick with that, is that most of the time, so they're vacillating from the past and the future, right? So when they're in the past, and I'm going to throw out a number, about 90% of the time when we experience a loss, when we're in the past, about 90% is regret. All those things I wished had been different, better, or more.
Yep.
Right? And so that's really only about 10% is in fond memories, right? Swing over
Isn't
to
that
the
sad?
I know, but it's just, and it happens.
human nature.
It is. It's
human
kind of
nature.
that where we go because of this. Oftentimes when people experience a loss, and it's not even a loss that happens suddenly. It can happen if you experience somebody, who's had a long illness. It's just something happens that when that person or that relationship ends, whether by death or divorce, that there is this tape that starts to play of all of those things that we wished, because it's this unfinished emotional business that when we experience the end of a relationship, that there is stuff that was left unsaid, things that we never got to do. So that's where I think that regret tape, I like it. If you think about, I remember as a kid, we had record players.
Yes.
And, when you would get a little, scratch, what would happen? You would get the needle would get stuck.
Yep.
And it would just go over and over. And what happens is when you get stuck on a specific image, or you get stuck on that, I wish I could have, why didn't I, that it keeps you from remembering all the good that happened before as a result in the whole relationship, and it keeps you from moving forward because you get stuck. So what I love about grief recovery is grief recovery helps people to get unstuck.
Yes.
Because if we swing over into the future, most of the time when we're in the future, about 90% roughly is worry.
Yes.
Well, what if this happens? How am I going to get through this? What am I going to do? What's my life going to look like? Whatever it is. And only 10% is really healthy planning.
Right.
And so what happens, especially when we're in the past or even in the future, is that we miss the present moment.
Yes.
And when we miss the present moment, it soon becomes in the past, and it becomes a regret. It becomes a regret. So really, one of the greatest things about grief recovery is it helps to free us up from those unmet hopes and dreams from the future, and all the regrets we had in the past. Helps us to stay present in the present moment with the people and relationships that we have today, because that's really all any of us are guaranteed, right?
You know what? Tomorrow's never promised.
And we know this more than anyone, right?
When you can just be present, learn from, your past is to teach you. That's all it is.
Yeah.
You can't go back and change it as much as you would like to. Can you make amends for things? Absolutely. And if you feel the need to do that, you should. Or just learn from it and create a different dynamic for your present day relationships.
Yeah.
Because holding on to what doesn't serve you anymore keeps people stuck and in those bad habits. So, eating, overeating, any type of addiction. So food addiction, sex addiction, drug addiction, gambling, shopping. There's so many of those that people just do so that they don't have to think or feel.
Yes. And you know what? So much compassion for that, because remember, we came into the world fully connected with those three systems
Yes.
as a baby, and then inadvertently, with no malintent, those tools are taken away, and so we start to stuff, and those backpacks where we're piling all those losses in this little backpack that we came in starts to become really heavy, and people seek relief.
Yes.
They seek relief in all different ways. And going back to what you were saying right before that is this whole idea of, having the past, and which is one of the other things that I love about the work I do with people with grief recovery is that, we don't talk about closure in grief recovery. We don't talk about, we don't want you to forget.
You shouldn't forget.
Especially people in recovery, don't forget what it was like, use it as a tool,
Absolutely.
right? Help it, help others with it, use it to propel you forward in recovery. But, this whole idea of, you have to just move on. You have to move on. It's like, well, we don't want you to move on. We'd like you to move forward. And most people, even though they understand that and it sounds good, let go of the past. Everybody talks about letting go. And I picture this, guy, and this is in the 2-day workshop too. It's like we talk about this guy in the jail,
yeah,
and he's holding on to these 2 bars, and he can walk out any time, but all he has to do is let go. So 1 bar is the past, 1 bar is the future, and so we want people to let go, but nobody tells them how. How do you let go? Yes, Gwen, I understand. I understand forgiveness. I understand letting go. How do you do it? And grief recovery is an amazing program that is specifically designed to help you, to give you the tools to let go so that you can let go of not the relationship, but the pain associated with the relationship. And so then you're freed up to hold on to the fond memories. And if they're, if it's not that kind of a relationship, at least free you up so that you don't continue to carry that into your current relationships and rob you of the joy of opening your heart today.
Right. And I think when you don't resolve old relationships, you will be drawn to the same relationship that you had before. It's that merry-go-round that you can never get off of.
So true.
So, you have to move through, and I like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not move on, because you know how many people after Thomas died, you need to move on. I need to move on.
Because that implies forgetting.
Right. So when I talk about my son, if that makes you uncomfortable, that's your problem, not mine.
Yep.
Because he's one of the greatest gifts of my life, and I'm going to talk about him.
And it is, and part of one of the reasons why I like doing shows like this is to help to educate, because a lot of times everybody's walking around with so ill-equipped that they want to say things that are helpful. They want to provide something, but most of the time there's really nothing that anybody can say to fix it. We're not here to fix any. Grievers aren't broken. They don't need to be fixed. They need to be listened to with dignity and respect, perhaps given validated. And I think that in the workshops and the groups, and even in the individuals with grief recovery, it's everything about grief recovery when I work with people is designed to help you to learn. And so through the process, you get to learn what it is in grief recovery is called being a heart with ears, being able to just bear witness, hold a space, listen with an open heart, with no need or to respond or comment or judge or analyze. It's not necessary.
Or even hug. Right.
Some
just
people
let the flow happen.
Just let it go.
Let it go.
And
that's how you let it go.
Yeah.
You have to take it from A to Z with no interruption.
And be honest.
Yeah.
Being emotionally honest.
And that's a tough place for most people to be.
It is.
Because being emotionally honest may mean that I have to take responsibilities for the things that I were capable of changing in the dynamic of whatever relationship that was.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's neither good nor bad, right? Those 2 words again. It just is what it is at the moment in time that you were.
Yes.
right?
Yes. But
So if I'm not the person I was 20 years ago, I'm a different, I have life experience. I've grown, I've learned.
Yes.
I've matured. Well, that's always debatable.
Well, but I know, I think it's such a good point to bring up.
So the things that I did wrong, or the things that if I was in the same circumstances today, it would be a different dynamic for me. I wasn't capable of that 20 years ago. So as much as I would, people like to beat themselves up, you can only be who you were at that moment in time. And I always say it even with regards to Thomas. What would you do differently? Nothing. I did the best I could at the moment in time that I was with the tools that I had available to me.
Which is why I think it's so amazing of the work that you do, because now, if I, different, better, or more, yes, today it would. And so being able to take that experience and share that, and I think it's so important. And I think that one of the things that I came across before, let's say before I had grief recovery in my work, that I would say things like that to grievers, and I would just get that stare of, yeah, but Gwen, you don't understand. But Gwen, I can't, I know what you're saying is intellectually true, but there's that disconnect because the head is saying you did the best you could, but the heart is saying, but you don't understand.
Yeah.
And so to be able, through a process, to uncover and discover what are those things that I wish that I would have done differently, even though the head is saying, but you did the best you could. The heart is still saying, but can you please just let me say it? And finding out what those things are, giving voice to them and releasing them out is really where I see the shift change, where that record player gets unskipped.
Yes. So important to do,
so important.
Too.
Yep.
Because that's all we have, right?
Yeah. Because it's true, we can't go back. That's
we can't go back.
We can't go back and change it, but we can allow that heart to talk. And it's funny, we talk about, how the head and the heart, are communicating with each other all the time. And people will say, well, what do you mean by that? And I said, well, the brain is constantly communicating to all the organs, right?
Yes.
So my great example of this is, so you ever driving home and you have a half hour to go and all of a sudden you got to pee.
Yep.
And so your bladder starts talking to your brain and says, now we got to go. And so the brain says, no, we got to get home. We got to get home. You just hold it. And so the bladder waits a little longer and says, we got to go. I'm telling you, really, it's going to be a problem. And so the brain says, all right, next gas station will stop. And so you're driving along, and then there's the gas station, and the bladder goes, gas station, and the brain goes, oh no, that looks dirty. We're not stopping. And the thing is unless we give, the bladder a chance to a voice, look, it could be embarrassing.
Yes.
It could be messy.
Yes.
But, you just got to do it. And so the heart is the same way, that when we have things we need to say, if we can allow the people in our lives who are grieving the chance for that heart without telling them that they shouldn't feel that way, or they don't have to feel that way, or okay, it could be a little embarrassing and it could get a little messy, but if they get it up and out, you will see. I mean, one of the things that I love,
it's freeing.
I never get tired of seeing this, and you might remember this in your small group when you did it. When somebody gets to that emotion that has been pushed down and they get it up, it can be very powerful, very strong, and you can see the sobbing and the crying. And if you can just be with that person, inevitably, you will hear this.
Yes.
And that's when you go in for that hug if they need. But if you can let them do it, they'll get there.
I always like to think of all these little boxes, all these little rooms that you have somewhere. Mm-hmm. And when you open that door, everything comes flooding out.
Yeah.
And then you have that, oh man.
Yeah.
That's been in there for a long
Who knows how
time.
long, right?
Right, you don't know how long.
And so,
Don't know how long.
and I think that when we talk about the kids, my brother died February of 2016, and he had a 4-year-old little girl, and she's just amazing. And I thank God every day for having the tools that I had to go to my family, to help them, to not take away those tools that she had, because she was just on that cusp at 4 years old. She's already getting messages from school
Yes.
and from movies and Disney and
They
everything.
are still so connected.
But she still was.
So connected.
And so what I look at when we can get in and help children to leave them with their tools of how to process their emotions and their grief in real time, that it's preventative.
Yes.
Right? Because that little girl knows she's now 6. And that little girl knows that whenever she thinks about her daddy, dreams about her daddy, anything, that it is perfectly okay for her to talk about it, cry about it, laugh about it, and then it's up and out, and she doesn't have to store.
Yes.
And she just knows that. And I say, well, this is a normal, healthy griever.
Yes.
This is the model right here. And, but most of us, we didn't get that opportunity because
my grandson was 4 when Thomas died. And he used to, he had many different experiences. I mean, really seeing him and doing different things, which was really very amazing. And I was so drawn to it because I always feel like little kids are between that world, and they do have they have no expectations of what's real and what's not real. So I used to listen so intently to him, but also just say, I know, I miss him so much too.
Yeah.
What's your favorite, and now that he's 11 and he's, he likes to still talk about him, and we look at pictures of him, and he wants to hear stories about him because he does still remember him.
And I tell people too that the moment at which that person died, that 3, 4, 5, their strongest memories are then.
Yes. Yes.
So important to talk about them and to help them to keep those memories, because it's the strongest they'll ever be at that time. And as we know, as time goes by, you start to forget.
You do.
So I can't tell you again how many people I have coming to see me who, and they almost gloss over it. They're there for one particular loss, and then, we talk a little bit more about, what was going on at home. What were you shown? Were there losses? Oh yeah, well, my mom died when I was, 8.
Yeah.
Or my dad died, and I said, well, what did people do? And they said, oh, we just didn't talk about them anymore. And does that just get me right here?
Because it was very matter of fact then. There was,
Well, they think a lot of times they were protecting the child.
Because the child had no capacity to understand or whatever. Even I had a miscarriage, and I remember my mother going, well, that's just nature taking care of you. There was no, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Yes.
It was, well, you'll have another baby.
Replace it.
Yeah. And I was like, this is screwed up.
Right. And the
Can I feel bad for a minute?
The underlying message, remember, that's one of the myths. Don't feel bad.
Right.
You can have another one. So we have don't feel the way you're feeling and replace it.
Right.
Yeah. And again, it's very interesting because everybody has these same tools that they were given that don't work. This idea of don't feel the way you're feeling, and all of it is so well intended.
It is, because you know what, ultimately,
most of the time,
the bottom line is people are uncomfortable with other people's feelings, period. End of conversation.
Could we just be okay with feelings?
Right.
Just be okay with it. I always tell people, if I ever came in and said, Linda, I won the lottery, would you ever say, now don't be happy, Gwen? We say stuff like that.
Right.
No, don't feel bad. Well, why? It's perfectly normal and natural to feel bad. Yes.
Absolutely.
or sad or frustrated or disappointed. It's just part of the human experience.
It is part of the human experience. And it's okay for everybody to be, when I get together, unfortunately, with other moms in the same club as me.
Yeah.
One of us, we can all be crying, laughing, doing whatever we do, and we don't miss a beat. We just let everybody be where they are and just, go through it. We're here.
Yeah.
If you want someone to walk through that with you, we're here.
Yeah.
But if whatever you need, we got you.
Yes.
But you got to call the shots.
Yes.
You got to lead the way.
Exactly. It is, and it's one of the things that I throw out to people when it's like, well, how long is recovery even possible from grief? And what do you mean by recovery? And how long does it take? And I get all kinds of different answers. I get, oh, well, it's a year, it's double the amount of the relationship if it's a breakup, all these kind of things. And
oh my
the thing
God.
is, time in and of itself doesn't do much other than it teaches us to live with the pain.
Yes.
And if we have that capability of compartmentalizing it in, certain, that's one thing. But the truth is grief is ongoing. But being able to have a way, like I said, to rediscover the ability to learn what it is, because remember, we came in with this ability to grieve and process our emotions. But if we rediscover that and then, take a moment and look back and say, what has been left incomplete? What is unfinished? And that is what our heart still wants to say. And if we can let that come up and out, then taking those actions plus time works very well for recovery from grief. Time in and of itself, not so much.
Time doesn't solve or cure anything.
Right.
Things get different. Different depends on how you respond to everything that's going on.
Yes.
I know that just firsthand. Things don't get better, worse, or they get different.
Yes.
But it's up to me to do my work.
Yes.
If I expect to live life is still good.
Yeah.
Life is meant to be good.
Has purpose.
It has purpose. But there's still going to be, if you don't allow yourself you will never understand happiness if you've never understood sadness. You have to have all these emotions to be able to identify what is good.
Yes.
If everything was good all the time, you wouldn't be happy.
You wouldn't know the difference.
You wouldn't know. You'd be flat.
Yeah.
And again, just with yoga and different practices, you never get attached to your happiest moment, and you don't get attached to your saddest moment.
Yeah.
Just be in the present moment.
Yes.
And just go up and down with that.
Yes.
That's
and isn't it,
what I've learned.
And to, like I said, there are so many different ways to get to that. It's not a one-shot deal.
No.
For anything. There's so many different ways that we can kind of hit this stuff. And thinking about grief and loss, like not just about death, but about, all kinds of life transitions. People, anytime there's, I love Grief Recovery's definition, grief, is the conflicting feelings that result whenever there's an end or change in a familiar pattern. So, and when you look at it through that, grief is really about change.
Yeah.
And so when we move, when we retire, when our kids go off to college, when we have a baby, life as we know it changes.
Yeah.
And those thoughts that we have around that will elicit certain emotions, depending on the value that we put on what's happened, as a positive, as a not so positive. But there will be conflicting feelings around all of this, which is why I say we are grieving all the time.
Yeah.
Because life is in flux. It's changing all the time.
All the time.
And so, I remember I have a trainer that I worked with who was training me through grief recovery, and she made a good point. She used to sing in the choir. And she says, I would stand there and look out at the people as I was singing in the choir. She says, and they all would just look like just kind of dazed, just looking for a little hope. But when we think about grief, and one of the common grief reactions is, I can't focus, I feel kind of out of my body, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, how many of us are walking around with those three things and we say it's menopause, which
Right.
that's a real deal. I'm not saying anything. Or I'm just, I didn't get a good night's sleep or whatever.
It's
or
stress or
burnout.
Right.
Whatever it is.
But you're stressed and burnt out from something.
Yeah. And so really, people say, well, I don't ever want to sound like a one-trick pony. Like, is it all grief? Well, I would say this, given that we're given the same not so great tools, that we're all carrying around these backpacks from when we were this big, and we're tired and we're exhausted and we're difficulty focusing, that get some tools to start working on some of those losses that you've incurred since you were this big, as well as some of the ones that you've incurred recently, and then see where you land.
And just have the tools to deal with everyday life.
Yeah, but at least if you'll know what's grief and what isn't.
Correct.
But a lot of times what I see happening is we're treating the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So we're trying to medicate some things that really don't need medication until you get to the point where you're so built up with stuffed emotions and you're exhausted and you're tired.
Medication has its place in life.
It does.
But there is no magic pill.
Yeah.
For any emotion that you have.
Yeah.
You still have to, people that are depressed. I remember after my mother died and my father, they gave him Zoloft, and I was like, you have a broken heart.
Yes.
You were married 57 years. So you think that, I go, I'm going to go to the doctor with you the next time.
Yeah.
This is grief.
Yeah.
There is no amount of medication that's going to lift you up and out of that.
And on top of that, if for that situation in particular, you've just done something that is designed to numb feelings.
Yes.
Which the cure for grief, which there is no cure, but the treatment for grief is to get to those emotions so that you can process them and bring them up and out.
Yes.
But you've now just given somebody something that prevents them from doing that, thereby needing more medication, different medication, and they're never getting down to the underlying causes and conditions of why you needed the medication in the first place. And I'm glad that you said that earlier, though, that I do believe I have had people in my life who were clinically depressed. And
without a doubt.
You know what I mean? So I always like to say that because,
There
chemical stuff going on.
Listen, when you are chemically depressed or,
clinical, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
But for someone that had just like, I just used my dad.
So that's a great example.
For him to lose the love of his life, the woman that shared 2/3 of his life with him.
Yep.
And then to say, oh, well, you're just depressed. Well, he's got a damn good reason to be depressed.
Yeah. And
can we offer him maybe, a group to speak with?
Yes.
Right? And to voice all those things.
Yep.
That's, there wasn't anybody that wouldn't have given me sleeping pills, depressants, Xanax, this.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel this, Linda. You don't have to feel this, Linda. Yes.
Yes.
Whether I felt it then, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, I still have to sit through all those emotions.
Yes.
Do I need to sit through every single one of them in a 24-hour period? No.
Right.
Do they still come? Yes.
Yes.
Do I just let them come and let them be and let them pass?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. There's really no way around it. I mean,
you can't go around it. You have to go through it.
Exactly. And it's,
But you don't have to go, and for everyone, whatever you're going through, when you get home in your safe space, you can deal with as much as you can deal with at that moment in time. And then tomorrow's another day.
Yeah.
I'll peel off a little bit more. Nothing, we don't live in a sitcom.
Yeah.
So we can't fix everything in 30 minutes or 60 minutes.
Yes.
So we have to be willing to be uncomfortable a little bit.
And be patient with
Be
ourselves.
patient.
And
People have
compassionate.
oh my gosh.
To yourself, compassion. Oh, if there's one thing that I see that, I should be better.
Everybody should.
I shouldn't feel this way. I should be grateful, Gwen.
People
Really?
say that, well, I wish I was as strong as you.
Oh, yeah.
You know what?
That's
how
the
do you
strong
know,
myth.
How do you know how strong I really am? Because most of the time I'm just falling forward.
Yeah. And how about we stop
But why you
celebrating
ca-
everybody to be strong and just be human?
Just be human.
Just be human.
The one thing that I've noticed is the resiliency of the human spirit, right?
Yes.
Everybody's human spirit is different.
Yeah.
So whatever people think my gifts are, you have a different set of gifts. Celebrate your gifts. Celebrate what makes you you.
Yes.
Don't compare yourself to me. Because would you
Absolutely.
really want to walk in my shoes?
Yeah.
So you can't pick and choose what you take out of me,
Yeah.
right? So just
Yeah.
set small goals, right?
Yeah.
If I
Do
could
the work.
do the work.
Do the work.
Do the work in steps, in pieces,
Whatever you can.
whatever you can, whenever you can.
Whenever you can. Yes. And because they're really, it's
We're always a work in
everybody's-
progress.
everybody's got their own timeline. And as I say that, something comes to me where, people say to me, well, when is too soon to start, getting help for when you've experienced a tragic loss? Well, when, and I say, well, if somebody fell and their arm got cut open on the table or something, would you ever say, well, let's just give them some time? No.
Right.
You get in there, you wrap it up, you call 911, you go to the hospital, and yet when our hearts are broken, there is somewhat of a tendency to say, wait a year.
Right.
Well, just wait a year. You do this, do that, and it's just like, I'm not saying jump in and read a book or but just know that you need help.
Be open to the help that's around
Exactly,
you. 'Cause
and
when
the support.
I have parents, I just say, don't be in a rush to do any one thing.
Yeah.
You can call me, and I'll sit and hold your hand, and we'll cry.
Yeah.
And that's being proactive.
Yes. Yes. That's
You
doing more than
don't
most.
have to do everything. You don't have to do anything. We'll just be in the moment of the day.
Yeah.
And you'll know the right time
Yes.
to go when you are capable of even deciphering what you're feeling.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just don't even know what you're feeling.
Yeah. So true.
And then you get disgusted with the process because I don't think I'm really doing the work.
Yeah.
So, the other woman in the group is doing, and you start to compare and all of those things.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important. And when I do, one of the greatest things about grief recovery when I work with people is that it meets everybody where they're at.
That's recovery coaching.
Yes.
Just meet people where they're at
Right. So
with no expectation.
well, she's crying. I'm not crying. Well, then be okay with it. It works nonetheless.
Correct.
It works wherever anybody is at. It will meet you where you're at and give you.
It's funny because people have said they're incapable of crying at different times. Okay.
Well, how about this? Numbness or feeling nothing is a common, normal grief reaction.
Yes.
And yet I can't tell you how many people I've come, particularly mothers who have lost their children to addiction, when they say, I felt so guilty because when I saw my son, I didn't cry, I didn't feel anything. And they have been beating themselves up mercilessly when the reality is that numbness, that shock,
That's exactly what it was. They were in shock.
is normal.
Yes.
To what it's something in
It
you is saying
protects you.
it's too much.
Too much for you to
But
handle
what
right
kind
now.
of mother am I, Gwen?
Right.
That I didn't cry. I didn't cry for a week. And it's just, again, that education that there is nothing wrong with you. And guilt, by the way, just because I said the G word, if you look up guilt in the dictionary, guilt has the definition of intent to harm. And that's another thing. People come to me and they say, Gwen, well, I feel so guilty. I feel so guilty. I didn't get to the hospital in time to say goodbye. And I say, well, did you intend to not get to the hospital? Well, no, I was speeding. I was calling the phone. I was doing everything I could. Well, so then let's switch out that word guilt and say, Gwen, I have regrets.
Yeah.
I really wished that I could have
and I'd
gotten
look
there.
at it a different way. I was with my dad when he passed, and I was not with my mom. So I say, I wasn't meant to be with my mom. And I just let it be at that.
Yeah.
You're not meant to be at different places.
Yeah.
So, my higher power that I'll call God sometimes protects you from the very places that he knows you can't come back from.
Yep. Yeah, and the whole idea of feeling this guilt over anything that, and listen, sometimes people did intend to harm, and then
Absolutely.
and then that is an appropriate word, but most times people, for a variety of circumstances, it's not really guilt, it's a regret. And then some people will say, well, Gwen, I don't like regret either. I said, well, regret I can help you with. Guilt I could help you with too, but yeah. But it is.
Then I regret eating cookies sometimes.
Oh, I know. My favorite short-term energy relieving behavior.
Yes.
I stirb.
You stirb.
So
I love that word.
Yeah.
But it's I think in today's society, we have lost the ability to connect with one another. Never mind connecting with ourselves.
Yes.
To give ourselves the opportunity to be quiet and listen to ourselves.
Yes.
So, thank you so much, Gwen.
You're so welcome.
Gwen is doing a 2-day workshop for Thomas's Hope this weekend, and we will have Gwen back on to discuss that at one point in time. The number for Thomas's Hope is up there. If you need to reach Gwen or you need help with almost anything, please give a call. You're never alone. We're here to hold your hand and help you get through whatever it is you're going through. Have a best weekend and enjoy.